Okay, I have the pleasure of being joined by Felicia Spencer. Felicia, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so thankful for your time. And one thing that impresses me the most about you, when I first met you at the jungle, you told me you were a teacher.
Yeah.
And now and that was before we even talked about you in the UFC. We talked about your goals. Here you are in the UFC, and I feel like you're just the same old person. And you don't get that a lot in the UFC. You really don't, or just stars and celebrities in general.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't really, nothing's really different, aside from just my phone blowing up a lot more. But everything, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty just grateful to be where I'm at and keep trucking
Right.
along.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you that. So I met you at the jungle. We talked to you, we interviewed you. The jungle, by the way, guys, check it out in Orlando. It's absolutely awesome. Um, so I talked to you and I'm like, yeah, so what's your end goal? And I know you mentioned the UFC. You just want to make sure that you're doing what you love type of thing. And here you are in the UFC. You won your debut. What has that journey been like? And has your life really changed drastically? Or is it like you said, is it just your phone blowing up?
Well, it is like it's an it's a huge accomplishment to even make it there and to have won my debut the way I did. It was, it's gonna follow me forever. You know, there have been certain things that have changed as far as just like plans and this and that, but ultimately I've always
Yeah.
had high goals for myself. Um, and I always would, I'm always pushing for the next big thing in my life. My fiance and I bought a house and fixing it up and this and that. So it doesn't hurt to have an extra couple paychecks from fighting to get things going a little faster.
Right, right.
um,
Well,
Goals are still goals, and yeah, we're just doing the best we can.
well, congratulations on the house.
Thanks.
Um, sorry, if you don't mind me asking, so are you done teaching now? Now that you've entered the UFC and, like you just said, more paychecks?
No, not at this point. There could be a time where I feel like I'm, making enough money to take a little bit of time off teaching. I mean, teaching is, I mean, like I said, a lot of people say, you can't train 24 hours a day. So I always have taught, and I'm sure I always will teach in some capacity. Right now, I'm still a full-time teacher, which, hopefully would I'll be able to make some adjustments if I'm comfortable with how things are going. But I can juggle it all. It's definitely a lot of work, but I've been getting used to balancing everything and just making sure that I know my limits as far as how many people I can make happy. You got to make sure I'm keeping myself sane.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's incredible. So you're probably the toughest teacher in the world.
I'll strive to be.
The one that reminds me, one of my favorite fighters was Rich Franklin, and he was a teacher when he got into fighting. So that's incredible that you still do that. It also reminds me of Stipe, how he's still a firefighter even though he's fighting the best in the world. So that's incredible.
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah.
so you have this fight coming up, but before we get into the fight, I wanted to just talk about, like, when I'm a sports fanatic. That's what I do. I literally live, breathe, watch sports, play sports, podcasts, you name it. So one thing that they always talk about is when collegiate athletes, like in college basketball, football, for the NBA, it's the speed of the game. The players, it takes a while for them to get adjusted to the NBA. For the NFL, it's like, wow, every guy they go against is huge. It's an NFL player. For you, was there a huge adjustment, or did you notice a huge difference in the level of competition from when you were in Invicta to now in the UFC?
I feel like I'm in a kind of a unique position with the division I'm in. I know that there's, the fight I'm going into, obviously every fight's the biggest fight of your life, but I know a lot of people kind of have an aura about, look at the top of my division with a certain mystique or, invincibility. Um, I don't feel at all overwhelmed by it. Everything felt very familiar and kind of just felt right when I was making my debut. That whole week, I mean, the whole camp, it just all felt like everything was coming together. And the whole week of media, fight, weight cut, everything just came together and it just felt like very familiar. I feel really lucky to have Invicta in my, my background because just having those main event spots, doing the media there, and feeling it really was a very familiar feeling. So I was kind of shocked that I wasn't shocked by the grandeur.
Right. Now that's interesting though, because one thing I've noticed is I've seen Island Fights now. I've like had the pleasure of interviewing their fighters after fights. Combat Night, obviously, I've had the pleasure of calling their fights and seeing their fighters. There's so many different paths to get to the UFC. You have someone who may be a celebrity, like we talked about the celebrity status, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar. They come in and they immediately get that fight. But then you see others who have to work that entire way. So I think it's interesting what your background is, because Invicta, like you just said, has such a great history of UFC fighters succeeding. And Combat Night, you see there's a lot of fighters, Michael Davis from Island Fights. So Invicta really did prepare you, and it had that UFC atmosphere before you were in the UFC. That's a huge advantage.
I think so. I know I'm not the only one that's had success going from Invicta to the UFC, and I think they do an amazing job there. And it's not just to help us be better UFC fighters, but they have just a great promotion, great opportunities for a lot of people, and just a great team. So yeah, I feel like the media and the radio and just everything connected really well.
Yeah, and I think I may have asked you this question back when I talked to you at the Jungle, but maybe your answer may have changed. I'm not even sure if I asked you it. So when I look at the UFC, the top of the top, now everyone wants to be a complete mixed martial artist, but everyone has one specific area where that's where you feel most comfortable. If there's danger, you're going to go where you're most comfortable. For Habib, obviously it's his wrestling. Anderson Silva was his striking. You look at Max Holloway, I feel like it's his boxing. It's his range, his tempo. Now, when people describe Felicia, and now you are getting a huge following, you are getting recognition, you're in the UFC, you're fighting arguably the greatest women's fighter of all time, you're going to get categorized now. So how do you think people will categorize yourself as far as your fighting style or what your specialty is?
I'd say based on what I've done, probably a grappler. I've finished every fight that I finished on the ground, either ground and pound or choke. So
Right.
I kind of put myself in that hole, which is fine. I embrace it. And the more people kind of pick your specialty and kind of think of you like that, then the more it opens up for shock and surprise when I can open up other areas.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be fair to say that the outside world would see me as a dominant grappler more than anything else.
Yeah, and you look at the women's fighting, and like you just said, when people they may get shocked because they may just perceive you as a grappler. Look at Rose, what she did to Joanna. It's like everyone knew Rose was dangerous on the ground, but her boxing and her power just threw everybody off when she rocked Joanna. And then I always think of Ronda Rousey, of course, right, who paved the way for women's fighting. Of course, there's Gina Carano, who I feel like people forget about, but Ronda Rousey is the main one. She was a specialist, and look how effective that was. So in a weird way, it's like you can't tell a fighter how to fight, but I feel like having that specialty that's better than anybody is just a huge advantage going into a fight.
Yeah, and for the fans too, they like having something special about somebody, something a little different. So
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember now I always take my my girl out to watch the fights at like Ale House or something. And one thing she noticed is every time we'd go, there's like more and more people paying attention to the UFC screen, because at Ale House there's sports on every screen, and usually like NBA, everyone's watching NBA or NFL. But now she would notice, hey, a lot more people are watching UFC, and I'm like, I know, it's growing rapidly. It's arguably the fastest growing sport and how global it is. Have you, as a fighter, really seen that movement because of the ESPN deal now? Is that UFC has really come, and just MMA in general, is now a more global and worldwide sport?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, it's hard to really tell when you're just kind of, I've been in the MMA community
Right.
for so long, that there's always been, the casuals that I talk to and, hardcore fans that I talk to. It's kind of hard for me to like judge that, but based on, just my level up to the UFC, I guess. just hearing from fans from around the world, just getting random messages from, Guatemala and New Zealand, and letters from Germany, and like just Hong Kong, everywhere. It's like very humbling to realize how many people are invested in the sport and in me, I guess. Like that people enough to actually send a message to someone like me that is it really is an eye-opening thought.
Right. And all right, so if people know the history of the UFC, now not everyone's a diehard fan, but for the most part, people have been watching it for a while now. And at first, women weren't even fighting in the UFC. They weren't even in there. And then, okay, the women were in there. Ronda Rousey had the big movement. But now it's like the main event of UFC 200, I believe, was Amanda Nunes. So it's like now it seems women's fighting is just constantly growing, and the competition is unreal. Just the parity with who's winning the what belt, and this person just won that. Do you think women's MMA can ever get to the point where it is the face of the UFC, where it has surpassed men's fighting?
Well, I don't know if that's the goal necessarily. As long as, if the playing field is equal, as much as I'm a, feminist and this and that, I don't necessarily want to like, push down anyone else at the same time. We can all rise up together. And as long as, I think the main goal is to have the sport, rise to the occasion of educating people on the sport and just putting out a good image, is the next step, so that we can have more, more kids and teens and adults and families involved and see the benefit that martial arts can bring to an individual, to a family, to a community, just how much it's all connected, and it all stems from being entertained in your living room, and then it can grow from there. So. Right. Really cool. I don't know if I answered your question and kind of went off there.
No, it's okay. You're free. And somebody like yourself, like I said, you are a teacher, and for you to become possibly a UFC world champion, just to get to the point where you've reached, that's so inspiring. Like you just said, for people in Guatemala, and you're going to get more. It's just going to come with it. That somebody I think UFC fighters can almost be the most relatable in a weird way, because I know you guys are the most extreme sport because you're going in there to hurt somebody else, but I'm not LeBron James. I'm not 6'9", jumping out of the gym windmilling, but you're a school teacher who's humble, and you're proving that you could do anything that you put your mind to. And I think that being able to relate to someone like that is what can inspire someone to get off the couch and try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, everyone started off just a regular life, and a lot of the big time athletes that you see on TV on the other sports, they were the people that you knew in high school. Oh, that person's, 6'5", 6'6", they're stars already. You can just tell genetically that they're different. Whereas UFC fighters, they're 125 pounds sometimes, or, when, just little guys and girls walking around that are just phenomenal athletes, and they can kick some ass. So, yeah. Definitely a different type of athlete.
All right. So now I do want to get into it. So I had the pleasure of, I talked to Amanda Nunes. I think she was like ringside at Titan. And one thing I was just impressed. I'm like, yeah, she's muscular. Like, she's a big girl. And I was like, wow. And then I've stood next to a couple women's fighters. I obviously stood next to you. And one thing that stands out about this division is you guys are extremely fast also for your size. So I'm like, you guys are the elite of the elite. You're fighting arguably the greatest women's fighter of all time. And I was thinking, I do research, right? I'm kind of nerdy with this research. So I was thinking about it and I was writing it out. I think you could argue you have the toughest second fight in UFC history. And that's remarkable, a remarkable challenge, but how about the remarkable respect, the immense amount of respect the UFC would give you to challenge you with Cyborg? Like, this opportunity you don't get off of a second fight. And I went through the list. I'm like, okay, before I talk to Felicia, let me just think of maybe the toughest second fights. Daniel Cormier fought Dan Henderson in his second UFC fight. And he was a star, obviously, because what he's done before it, an Olympian. But I'm like, that's pretty tough. Anderson Silva fought Rich Franklin, but we all know he fought in Pride. But Rich Franklin was the champion after he beat Chris Lieben. Then Brock Lesnar, the fame, right? He fought Frank Mir, but then he fought Heath Herring, who was a legend in Pride. I could argue, like I said, that Cyborg is one of the greatest female fighters of all time, and she surpasses all of them when you look at the pound for pound and their legacy. Has that hit you that like you are about to fight someone of this magnitude and you hang right there with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm just, like I said, I'm so grateful. I'm honored to have the opportunity, and I'm just really excited to shock the world. And I'm actually kind of surprised by the amount of people who haven't count me out in this fight, because you're right. Obviously she's one of the greatest, and to have someone making their debut and then the next fight is Cyborg, I assume that everyone would write me off with the old bye Felicias and stuff that I love to use, which is fine. I don't mind it. I expected to be, portrayed that way,
Right.
but it just makes it even more exciting to go in there and shock the world. But I'm actually surprised by how many people have been on my side, not counting me out and kind of saying, hey, don't sleep on, me, because, I definitely have some skills bringing to the table. But yeah, it's definitely, it's crazy. I feel so comfortable with it, though. It's like, this is exactly what I've been planning for all these years. I'm going to fight Cyborg before she retires. And look, I might retire her, like that might be it. And then I did it again. And all these plans I've made over the last years and years and years have somehow panned out. And it just feels like this is going to be another one of those moments. So I'm just really comfortable, ready to go.
Well, I'm certainly not counting you out because, like you mentioned, in a fight, anything can happen. And any logical sports fan will tell you anything can happen at any given moment, no matter who you are. You can be the best of the best, the worst of the worst. Anyone that gets in there, anyone has an opportunity to win. And that's what's so unique about MMA. But styles make fights. And like you just said, you're an MMA fighter. I'm not saying you can't strike whatsoever. I'm saying that you have grappling that is far superior than a lot of people. Like that is your thing. You can knock Cyborg out, but stylistically, Cyborg's going to be worried about that grappling because that's the worst thing that I think she can fight is a grappler. But what's interesting to me is how stars bounce back when they lose. We've seen a lot of people when they have that aura of, hey, I'm unbeatable. When they're at their top, they seem invincible. But once they lose, people see them for what they are, and they don't always bounce back. So that's why I think this is a tremendous opportunity for you to get this win, just because now, like you just said, you're comfortable. You're seeing Cyborg for who she is. You don't see her with this whole persona of being invincible like a lot of people may before you have seen her.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been thinking about she's got the best name in the sport, maybe a cyborg, but she's not actually a cyborg. Yep. She's Cris. Just like she's a person. Right. She's got a family. She's the same. We're walking in the same size in the same cage. We've both been training for a very, very long time, and it levels the playing field. And yeah. The mystique about her doesn't intimidate me at all. I'm really just excited to stand in front of her I know a lot of people say that they've seen fear in their eyes, and I'm just ready to look her in the eye and just be honored to be facing her and bring it to her.
Right, you could be her Rose to she's Joanna.
Yeah.
But first of all, I want to thank you very much again for giving me your time. I know you're bouncing, your DMs are shooting with a whole bunch of people inspired by you. So for you to give me your time, I'm thankful. Before I let you get your sponsor plug in, I do want to run this theory by you. And I think I may have, again, run this by you, but maybe your opinions change once you're in the UFC. So let's see. Like I said, I'm a big sports fan, NBA, NFL, all that stuff. There's always a scoreboard. In the UFC, I'm so tired of seeing robberies or gosh, I wonder who won that round. It drives me insane. So I feel that there should be a scoreboard implemented where the judges submit their score after each round. So you know who won that round. The fighters know, the coaches know, the fans know. Not only does that build suspense, but it gives people awareness and holds the judges accountable. Do you want a scoreboard? Do you like that theory?
It's an interesting idea. I'd be interested to see how it would play out with like some test runs, and it wouldn't be something that I think that could be immediate, like during the break you would know, but maybe during the following round you could find out. I could see that maybe breaking. Because I don't know that they changed their score. I don't think that they're supposed to be changing scores round to round anyway. I think that their scoring system could use a little revamping itself, but I don't see the harm in that. It'd be interesting to see how it would pan out on some smaller shows to see how it works, and then kind of go from there. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea.
Yeah, and I think this, like, not points, because points can get really confusing. Like, oh, leg kick is at 2 points, but just a general concept of the round of just
who won or didn't win. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's an idea.
Well, Felicia, I'm so excited to watch you beat Cyborg. I think you will shock the world. Please use this time. Shout out any plugs, sponsors. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and all the fans also, couldn't be here without you guys and the media and everything. I have so many people that helped me get through camps, and the Other Side Apparel has been super, super helpful, and really exciting things coming with them. Lucas Wine and Spirits and Patriot Defense Group have been kind of laying low, but very supportive with my camps also. I have some new shirts that I'm actually wearing one right now.
Nice.
That'll be going to sale. I'll be posting about that real soon, and with the help of Graphics Your Way, they're on Instagram. They can send out any cool graphics and shirts and stuff. Idle Hour in Lincoln, Illinois. I know I'm forgetting a bunch. The Josh Saman MMA Foundation is a very big part of my gym and my community, and I hope to keep representing them on the big stage. I said that one already. Sports Eyewear, my newest sponsor. Some really awesome eyewear for training and going out. I'm not wearing it right now, but I really appreciate it. I'm sure I'm missing some, but I'll let you guys go. So, but yeah, thank you again for all your time also.
Of course. Again, thank you. Best of luck to you in your fight. I do have you winning. I'm not just saying that because I'm here with you. I do have you winning. So,
what else are you going to say to me right now to my face? No, I'm kidding. No.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.